Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to another experience of the African Speaks, where we have been focusing on the Ubuntu generation, the coming of the Ubuntu generation, and this is going all year, all year, all year. Now, we have been working on some the topics that we have been focusing on have been focused on identity. And it's important for us to understand identity. And so I want you to focus on the fact that dealing with the issue of identity and education. See, education does not is more than just an information transfer. It doesn't start in the classroom. It begins at your starting point. Then the question is, what's your starting point? If it doesn't matter where you are as a child, but if you was as a child, if you raise a child in the experience of limitations, or if you were raised with limitations, and sometimes we knew we were in limitations up until we got out of the world, out of the family, out of that circle, or sometimes in our own families, we knew that we had certain limitations. We would spend our entire life trying to overcome those limitations. Now, when you're raised in a state of wholeness, when you're raised in a state of wholeness, you spend your life expressing yourself from that understanding of wholeness, that experience of wholeness. And so, where you start your life from is important. Where you perceive your starting point is important. And tonight, we're going to ask the question, where did I get started? Where's my point of beginning? And then how do we, because I'm still on the same journey, how do we return to that experience? Now, before we get there, we always do a recap because this particular lesson has gone on so long that, and y'all forgive me, I'm sitting there trying to share this to the page that I need to share it to. There we go. Because I have people hit me up saying, hey man, I didn't see the show. So thank you for your patience. And so in this, we do a recap because I need you to, as we move on to the second quarter, I need you to put the chains, the links to this chain of understanding, the link to the chain of information, so that you get the picture that we paint for you. The picture that comes to us is a clear picture. Now, these lessons that have been given, and we're on week 12 of the year, each lesson can stand as its own lesson. But when you put it together, it makes everything more clear, which gives you the awareness to move through the obstacles inside your own thoughts, mind, spirit, body, will. Clears it up. And so, with the Ubuntu generation, when I embarked on this journey to teach, I said, you know what? I got to teach these kids who they are. We got to prepare this next generation to fight beyond separatism. Why can't black people work together? It's because we're missing that philosophy of Ubuntu. And so the first lesson we dealt with was the fact that Ubuntu was divine. And we had to, in this conversation, we go back. Who were we before the world defined us? Before colonialism, before the mark of slavery, before separation was introduced, before, you'll probably hear this again, the brutality of ignorance. Yes, physical abuse is one thing, but mental and spiritual deletion of someone's not deletions, but blockages of someone's memory of who they are from a divine eye. Yeah, that's as brutal as you can get because you said, hey, destroy the mind and keep the body. Brutality of ignorance. Why? Because our concept of where we started from was clear in the beginning, unified in the beginning. We are, as a people, we lived as a manifestation of the divine organization of the universe. Beautiful thing. No separation from anything. That is Afro consciousness. All things are an expression of the Most High, the source, or however you want to call it. And so we took a look at that and we said, okay, some people, and I've had individuals who are watching this, never even dealt with anything outside of their African American experience. But I said, we got to close the circle on this one. Yeah, our experience, this is just a small fraction of who we are as a people. And so we dived into that African mind versus the colonized mind. We dived into straight into black reality. Black reality is understanding where we are today. What is happening to us internally. Forget what's happening, because I have a lot of individuals who are always focused on the external issues. Very few ministers are constantly dealing with the internal problem. External issues will blow by us, but once we get that internal circuitry right, we'll get there. But internally, we're dealing with two mindsets that are competing against each other. The African mindset, that's communalism, the colonized mindset, which is individualism and separateness. And they're always fighting. You get fatigued, you get tired, you stress, anxieties. The part you know about, which is the colonized mindset, is fighting, always fighting to suppress that divine mindset of the African mind. Always fighting. And I don't care how long you've been in this spiritual journey. It's always been fighting. And then we went and we combined the two lessons. The kingdom within, identity as a spiritual technology. We knew that to reach your higher sense of self, you have to understand that there is a kingdom, a divine kingdom of the Creator and the Most High inside of you. And there's not one spiritual discipline that says anything different. Now, you have them written in certain spiritual disciplines, but they don't talk about it much. They don't speak on the kingdom within you and how to approach that kingdom, how to interact with that kingdom, how to move from that kingdom and not move from the colonized world around you. And then we said identity as a spiritual technology. Those who lived in the understanding of Afro consciousness knew how to access that in the kingdom, was governed by that in the kingdom. And so their identity reflected their understanding of their spiritual technology and how they lived with each other, how they lived with the earth and animals, how they lived with their ancestors and paying homage to their ancestors, how they lived connected to the Most High, and how they lived connected to the universe before the Most High. Because you had some individuals who could read them stars like the back of their hand. So spiritual technology, your process of expressing your connection to the Most High, was where you pulled your identity from. And so again, all these connect. This is when we get down to this last part, but we'll get there. And then we talked about language as programming. And you're going to hear this again tonight with tonight's lesson. Everything coincides, everything is one, but you can have these. If you take a look, if you miss anything, go back. Because in the next 2 weeks, we're going to be on a whole different understanding of Ubuntu, where we're dealing now with identity and structure In the next quarter, we're going to be dealing with healing, the healing factor, the healing the child within. Yeah. And so the language was dealing with the fact of how do you speak to yourself? Your words affect, when they say the power of life and death is in the power of the tongue. How do you speak when no one's talking? Your thoughts are your language. Your fear is your language. Your doubt is your language. Now, to be able to access and function from that state where you're dealing with the spirit, the kingdom within, your language to yourself has to be completely different. Completely different. Not only that, your language that you have toward everybody else. Because when you're dealing with the issue of Afro consciousness, you understand the connection you have with every and all things. So your conversation has to be on a higher frequency, has to be a frequency with love, has to be a frequency of connection. That just it has to be. If not, you're tearing down the very fabric of energy that you need to truly access your higher self. That Ubuntu consciousness, I am because we are. And so here, we also stated that with the neurological architecture aspect of language, we said that everything that you say affects your nervous system. It affects your field of survival. So if you're speaking on a low frequency, you are either talking to somebody in a particular way that is destroying their vibrations and it's making them feel tight and that you're locking them in survival mode. That's when people say, oh, you're getting defensive. Well, you're not speaking me from a place of love. And so you're locking me into survival mode and I got to fight my way out. That's programming. So you got to be careful of how you speak to yourself because you can speak to yourself straight into survival mode. And you can speak to someone else backing them into survival mode. Knowing that we are so much beyond that. Living is being, not surviving. Being able to be all that you were called without stress and strife. And language programs that reality. And so you got to be careful of how you think. Because you can say whatever you want, but if your mind and your body are not, we'll talk about that later today, in coherence, and your language is coming out, nah, you're breaking the fabric of yourself and the fabric of whoever you're talking to. So the language of liberation has to be affected. And then we went from there to say, okay, so if the language got to be affected, then the same thing has to go with emotional regulation. And you have to be able to understand it. You're okay. It's okay to feel whatever you're feeling. How you express it is key. How you express that feeling of hurt, pain, and suffering, or whatever you go through will manifest in your language. And then it'll go to your identity, right? And it'll keep you or block you. That feeling will block you from experiencing the kingdom within. And so, and again, the African proverb, a man who cannot govern himself cannot govern the village. And governing your behavior and how you interact, because that is key. How you interact with the people that are around you. How you allow to when someone says something to you, do you process it as it's being complete truth? Or do you process it as, you know what, I'm sorry, that's your truth, but it's not mine? Do you accept their declaration? Because people can declare anything to you. The issue is, do you accept it? In my community, we say we had the uh, declaration of inferiority, and then you have the acceptance of inferiority. That's the issue is when you accept it. That's the problem. Anybody can declare your inferiority. Anybody can declare you being less of a being. Anybody can declare your lack. The issue is anybody can discriminate you against you, but do you accept it? And do you live from that acceptance? That's where we get further and further away. And in that space of getting further and further away, we went into the amnesia of the African diaspora, where we are so distant from understanding who we are. Everybody. There is not a person that functions totally out of the space of amnesia. In my community, we say if all of us ain't liberated, then none of us are liberated. We ain't free until every African on the planet is free. And if you live a state of, it ain't me, that's amnesia to the connection that we have with each other, the connection we have with ourselves. The connection is amnesia to the connection we have with the land, with our ancestors. Some of us have deities, and then some of us have just the Most High. You got to understand that hierarchy, and you have a connection to all of it. And so from that point, we went into the understanding of the African cosmos and the cosmic order of all things. I am because we are all connected. And so breaking down those areas and showing us how we are a part of it. We were doing Bible study, and one sister said, my grandmama told me the black man came, that man came from the dirt. She didn't say black man. Man was made from the dirt. I said, well, if you remember the lesson we spoke about, when you think about the esoteric meaning of being born out of the dirt, meaning that you are within you, all the not all of, but the elements that are in the universe is in you. And I showed them how you have the periodic table. And then I showed these are the elements that make the universe in their perfect divine order. Nothing was created that is not in its right place. And then these are the elements that are in you. And I said, do you see the elements? How you relate, that you have connection to what is in the universe? So what was pulled out of the manifestation of the universe was pulled out of the universe and was placed in the being of who you are. And you can have the, you don't want to have those imbalances of those elements, because that's illness, no harmony, dis-ease. You do not live in ease. And of course, as African Americans and Africans of the diaspora, none of us live in a state of ease. And so we're always struggling, but our job is, in Ubuntu, is to understand it as a philosophy and begin to accept it. You have to understand that you are part of that cosmic order. Everything about you is a part of that cosmic order. And if you can't find yourself aligned, and in this that cosmic order of things, we dealt with the constitution of man, and that's going to come up again tonight, right? And so we dealt with, you have to get the constitution of man right. Everything has to be aligned in order for you to access, maintain, and sustain that understanding that the kingdom of the Most High is within you. And so from there, we said, okay, well, what's the problem? Easy. We got to understand that we have memory and then we got history. Memory is something that you can't get erased. The brutality of ignorance did not erase our memory of who we were called. That's why you can't stop us. Regardless of where we are right now, that battle, that journey within ourselves, yeah, recovers all of the information needed in us. History is told to us. History is programmed in us. History is something they use to help us stay conditioned, psychologically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually conditioned to never become what we already are. And in my community, that's that practice of becoming what you already are is called kuwa. And whether we use the word or not anymore, because we don't, it still is what it is. And in those processes, you find your best self. But you got to go through the process or the journey of activating that memory. It doesn't stop. That memory is there. Awakening that ancestral knowledge of who you are. And we start calling us each other kings and queens and princess, god and goddesses. It hasn't triggered that memory because we haven't gone through that full process of rediscovery. And so tonight, we're at that place where we're dealing with the orientation of consciousness, rewriting the starting point, rewriting the starting point. Now, in that process of rewriting, we say rewriting, all of us was given or inherited. Is that there? Because I don't want to jump too fast. In rewriting the starting point in consciousness, we're trying to sit down and say, you know what? They control how we think. They control where we at. They control our starting point. When I ask you who you are, where you come from, and a lot of people say I'm a product of my environment. That is where you created your life's identity from that particular starting point. My life started when? Way before you got here. Way before you knew your name. Your starting point was already there. Way before you knew or defined yourself as a color or race. You started way before that. Your starting point goes way beyond any place because before you had any clue, before you had any clue of who you were and the world you were brought in, the position was before you even knew the position, before you even knew how to take your first steps, you knew who you were. You knew that your starting point went beyond your mother and your father, the house you live in, the city, the schools. Those are not your starting points. Those are the positions that you were put in behind being a part of a maladjusted and corrupt system that was not set to have us grow and mature with wholeness. We all had states of limitation, regardless where you lived. Being of African descent and not having any control over the institutions that governed your life, where everybody focused on survival. Some people survive better than us, but that doesn't mean their starting point was any good. And so in these mishaps and these misstarts, we come across these issues. When you don't realize that you got shifted into a starting point, that you got shifted to a place where you forgot your starting point. Now, and I did this. You have a life based off of survival mode. You have a life based off of recovery or response. You have a life focused on uh, seeking external validation. It was the beginning of your blocks. Even though you were nestled in the arms of your mama, if she did not understand that I have to raise this child so that their starting point, they remember their starting point, where they began. Because this is inevitable if the processes are not done from the jump, because it is made. You didn't uh, ask for the position you were in, ask for the way your mama thinks, the way your grandmama thinks. You inherit it. It was your inheritance. When you began to become socialized in this world, your starting point was absolutely erased. It was moved. It was shifted. It was converted. It didn't delete, but something was saved on top of it. The starting point that you call this is it. And I don't know how many people be like, oh yeah, well, from my block, my neighborhood, well, my mama said, I had somebody do that to me before, looked at me and said, well, according to what my mama said. So wait. Are you using that information from a place where you started from the beginning? Is that basing on truth? Or it based that information that your mama said was based off of her starting point? And so you got to take a look at that. You inherited your starting point, the beginning. This whole system, the brutality of ignorance. Let's shift their starting point so they, not that they can't remember, but they lose their memory. That's that spiritual amnesia of the diaspora. They're dealing only seeing a history, not tapping into their memory. Why? Because your starting point shifted. And so in that space, we have to get to a point where we tap back into our memory. We have to reorientate our consciousness. We have to get our conscious state. We have to switch it. The other day I was speaking to my brother, one of my brothers, and he was asking questions, spiritual questions. I really didn't, I've never asked you these questions. And I want to know certain things. I said, okay. And so when he was making his decisions, I said, so what starting point are you choosing to pull that information from? He said, I said, when I asked you about when is the starting point of Black history, and if I say, look at Black history, what do you think of? And he said, Harriet Tubman. I said, yes, struggle and survival. Harriet Tubman didn't ask for that position, but she was inherited it. Sitting in a society that had shifted our beginning and stripped us away from our understanding, but that bump on her head triggered her memory. That bump on her head triggered her memory, was activated, reactivated. And when she opened her eyes and understood who she was and the circumstances where she was in, and then she was able to tap into the kingdom inside herself, that memory said, there is nothing about you that can't overcome what you're about to go through. And she functioned 100% from that memory. Now, when you have access to that memory, who has to put a crown on your head? And how can someone take a crown off your head that they didn't even put on? Nobody. You're born with the understanding of the authority that you have, the creativity that you have when you access your memory. There are no shortcomings in your beginnings, and whatever you're about to go through, you were prepared for it. Why? Because it's told to you from your memory. And when we look at individuals in this process of fighting through survival, we celebrate. We celebrate those who had done things in our survival state in order for us to have a better experience because they tapped into their memory. And the issue is, when do you tap into yours? Because it's something that we all are, Harriet. We all are Nat Turner. We all Marcus Garvey. We all Malcolm X. We all Martin Luther King. In my community, we all Jaramogi Baby Ajamin. All of us, not one. All of us sit in the seat of Jaramogi, not one. We just choose to call someone you at the top. But in my position that I sit in, man, I sit in the authority of being the founder of the kingdom of God inside of me. And I use it willingly to shift the reality of my people's consciousness because I can't change the outward extremities unless I change the internal. So when you sit on a throne that has been given to you at before birth and you function from that, identity comes from spiritual technologies. You'll move further than you can ever realize. And so Ubuntu is that process of recognizing who you are. You already know. You've always known. You've known for a while. Have you ever done something in your life where it just was a part of you? You didn't know how good you were until you realized how good you were. How'd you do that? It's just what I do. People say, how do you do this, Ajay? It's who I am. And I'm not letting it go for anybody. This is why I got a slogan. I can't be voluntold. Why? Because you might shift me out of my alignment with the kingdom that is within me. Now I share my kingdom with you sharing your kingdom. We come together and have a greater kingdom where two or more gather. And we see what we need as a people so that we can be in harmony. None of us living in a state of survival. We're all living in a state where we are allowed to be everything that we're called. And so we understand what the assignment is. And we live from that assignment. And we live at a higher state of our assignment. And then you can tell individuals who slip in their assignment. But when you don't know your starting point, when you have a starting point that was inherited from the experience of lack or making sure of the brutality of ignorance, you are in hot pursuit of nothing. You are in hot pursuit of everything external. High pursuit of external validations, high pursuit of somebody else's wealth and riches, high pursuit of your identity, high pursuit of your purpose, everything outside yourself. Of nothing, because your purpose is not outside you. You're not going to find it there. Your talent is not outside you. You're not going to find it there. You're looking at somebody else's life and saying, I could do that, but that's not what you're called to do. You're in hot pursuit of nothing. But when you sit down and you say, you know what? I need to take this turn. I don't recognize myself because I know I was born to be better than where I'm at. It doesn't matter what you receive and what you have, but you sit down one day and you look in the mirror and you realize, wait a minute, is this me? Am I doing what I'm called to do? And you realize at time, you know what? I got to go in. I want to finally connect to something higher. I want to connect to something deeper. I want to connect to something that has been calling me my whole life. I need to go back to the place where I began to access the truth of my being. I'm trying to remember, not remember, but yeah, recall. And it hasn't been erased, but I want to remember. I want to remember me. Not what my mama told me I was, not what my daddy told me I was. I want to remember me before I got here. I want to remember me by that being, that entity of however you call it, that created me. I want to remember. And so we dive into those processes of remembering, trying to shift the starting point. And so when you start to identify your current point. That's it. Identify your current point. Ask yourself the question, what do I assume is true about myself? And then question its origin. Meaning, is that coming from the mindset that I inherited according to my false starting point? Or is it becoming from the divine awareness that I have about where I really started from? Now, I have a problem, yes, I do, when somebody wants to force me to listen to a truth that they have based off of their false starting point. Man, I have a problem sitting still. Because in that, I'm looking like you're making assumptions about reality that you live in, that reality that other people live in, that are not based in any sense of truth. Because accepting the wrong starting point will put you in a place where nothing about your reality truly only makes sense. And if it does make sense, it only makes sense to you. Don't you want to know how I feel? No. Why? Because you're perceptive. Your perception is off. How do you know? Because I can tell that that starting point, that feeling, that expression is not coming from a place of wholeness. It's coming from a place of lack and limitation. If you ever said you wasn't enough, if you ever said you needed external validation, if you ever thought that you're trying to go around life and find your purpose, yeah, you're pulling from the wrong place. And so being able to sit down and question that origin. And then when you locate that origin, you ask yourself, where did it begin? Where did this thought begin? Now, for me, as a child, when I said this phrase, I heard this phrase, and it was with me. And it's funny where I heard it. And if those who love wrestling hear it, you're gonna know it. I think I was in the sixth, seventh grade when I heard it. I am the best it is. I am the best it was. I am the best that it will ever be. In this world, there is nobody in life who can be a better me than me. And I'm going to be great at all that I attempt to produce. I'm going to be as good as I can. I didn't understand where that came from because I was coming from a position of lack. I knew I was the only one that believed it because everybody else wanted to give me limitations. Even now, sitting in a space where people want to give you limitations. You can't do this. That's too much. Wait, did I tell you it was too much? Let God tell me that I put more on the plate than I can do so that I can go back to my starting point and ask and be grateful. Say, thank you for giving me the strength to complete this task that I know everyone said I can't. Let the truth in me show that it's all possible, that I am limitless. When the kids ask, how old are you, Isaiah? And the kids, all they want, he's timeless. And I've been saying that since I was 12. My trauma shifted my memory. Now, detached from any unconscious acceptance, meaning this, I attach to this because it was given to me by, and sometimes we don't even understand why we accept things. Oh, I don't do that. Why? I don't like that. Why? Well, because you can ask why long enough, there's no answer. Detach yourself from all unconscious acceptance. Hold off and re anchor yourself to continuity, which is memory. What are you being told internally? I have someone who's saying, I got to go back to the church that I used to go to, get back to where I used to be. And I'm like, wait, do you think that's where your truth lies? Where is that origin from? Is it from your survival state, or were they functioning from a state of wholeness? How far back does that beginning go? who they tell you that you are. Now people say, "Oh, you're a child of the Most High." Yeah. So why you ain't working as in the program like you know that, and you're trying to save me from the situations that you are still in? Mm, yeah. Rhino season's coming. We're gonna speak some serious truth. But when you start doing these processes, you start taking down those walls that are in your own psyche. Now get this. Nobody can do this for you but you. You start dealing with the issue of accountability. You are 100% accountable as an adult, not as children. As an adult, you become accountable for making the shift in your life all on your own, because no one can go inside your psyche to change those things. That starting point, you have to take the time to do that. Now that's you. However, this process is not a process about individualism. No, you can find a group that believes in what you believe and is fighting for that starting point to connect with two or more gather. Now the thing about this is, you can't be in that group to spectate. A lot of sisters get in these places, and a lot of brothers, a lot of people get into these places, and they don't know how to truly release. And I've been in circles where I had to turn the room out because I was going crazy inside, and nobody was releasing. And I'm looking like, is anybody being real? Boom. Whatever I was holding back came back. Tony McKinney, thank you. Because I looked at, opened my eye, my young self, opened my eye, and I said, "Sister, you sure I can do this exercise for real?" She said, "Let it out, brother. This is that safe space. I didn't come to spectate, I came to heal." And I tore that room up. And she didn't know what I was going through internally. Why? Because I keep a smile. But you can find some people, but in that space, you cannot come to spectate. You got to come to participate. And the more you give up of yourself, is the more that you can trigger somebody else to give up a part of themselves that keep you away and truly connect, truly bond, truly develop that flow of connection where we are helping each other tear the walls of our own ignorance down so we can get to the point where we are unlocking our memory of who we are to ourselves, who we are to each other. And look at this. They're in the ocean. What is the spiritual relationship that we have with water? What is the spiritual relationship we have with large bodies of water? It's connection there. Now, you say, okay, I'm going down this road. How do I judge myself? I said, oh, that's easy. Consciousness stabilizes through repeated repetition of awareness, meaning you're always going back to challenge where a thought comes from. You're never giving that up. You understand that there is a higher state of thinking where you're renewing your mind. Mm. Be ye renewed, be transformed through the renewing of your mind. You always have to sit down and measure every step of the way, every decision you make is coming from a place of survival, or is it coming from a place of my higher self that I make these decisions? My mentor used to ask me before he made his transition every time a major move. I said, wait, which one should I do, Ajay? I said, well, what mindset are you in when you're making a decision? What do you mean? If you're in your survival mode and you're making a decision based off of money, both decisions are wrong. If you are in the state of wholeness, and you are not becoming, but you're being. I'm going to be my greatest self with this next step. It don't matter which one you take, which route you go. Why? Because you are going to be your highest form. Also, you always got to check your language. Man, that's been my hardest part. That right there has been my most difficult part, and I'm working on it. And it's not that I speak negative, because I don't. I just know me, and I know others. And so it's hard for me, my language, to sit down and say, yeah, if I put this in your hands, I can close my eyes and turn my back, because you function from your highest state of self, so it won't get dropped. But then when I look at people's complete journey, not the fact that we got one task today, I'm like, well, wait a minute. If liberation is 365 days and I only see you on holidays, I can't put anything in your hands because this is too valuable. And I had a brother tell me, he said, brother, with all that you're doing, you are too valuable to the liberation of black people to sit down and transition over because you don't get enough sleep. I started listening, right? Bakiba, I started listening. And so you have to have that language that you speak to yourself, that you speak to everybody else. Now, the conversation I have with me, powerful. I can't stop me from, I just can't. I have to learn how to be able to share that awareness in conversation and language with those that have shown me throughout a period of time non producing. That's the hard part for me. And I'm learning that. And I can verbalize it, so I'm working on it. And then the emotional discipline. I think that goes hand in hand. Where you don't respond harsh, you process. You just allow things to process, and you say, okay, when I respond, I'm going to respond from a place of love, a place of healing, a place of understanding, and a place of growth, a place to where I'm aware, a deep state of spiritual awareness that this is a journey that we all are taking on this in the community that I'm in, and everybody has a part to play. And so, regardless of and I've been through some real harsh situations, and someone said, "How did you not respond in anger?" Because anger doesn't help the situation. I'm turning the other cheek. And the person who was talking to me shook their head, said, "There's no way I could do that." I said, "Well, I'm seeking to become my greatest and highest and my best self. And for that, I have to." Now, that doesn't mean, I'm not going to be wise, but I'm definitely going to sit down and let that go. Because there's a greater thing. There is nothing more sacred than the liberation of black people. Then the last one is important. Embodied alignment. And we talked about this in the uh, session where we dealt with the African speaks, the power of the divine self. And we did that last year before we started this Ubuntu journey. And we did that for a good long time to finish the power of the divine self. We got 23 chapters on the power of the divine self, 23. And I was almost done, but there was something that was missing. And the universe said, put a break on it, son. We need to take you down a different road to get this. And so that embodiment, your body has to have the experience of what your mind and your spirit speaks. That's coherence. Mind and body coherence. Mind, heart, body, spirit coherence. You have to be at one. You can't sit down and say, well, when I was a kid, I'm the best it is, was, and will ever be. And it not manifesting how you carry yourself. I'm a child of God, and then God gives you an assignment and you choose not to do it. Then did you really believe that? Or you just saying it? Coherence is key. Your body is supposed to respond from the understanding of your true starting point. And this mind body coherence, heart and mind body, all that coherence connects to an even deeper quantum coherence. Have you ever had a situation where everything just was right? Everything was just perfect. Everything aligned exactly the way it was supposed to align. And you barely had to even blink a bat of eye, lift the elbow. It was just a smooth roll. Yeah. Quantum coherence. People would gravitate to you that you didn't know you need. I had that experience today. And we're about to produce some great things as some come, man. The right people are showing up. That means that the universe has witnessed your recollection of your memory. And I really call people, let me see if I can do it in this way, right? My hands fit here. And I feel it shifting. The hair in my arms stick up. I'm tingly all day when the quantum coherence is in line and I feel, whoa, I don't know what's moving, but the earth is moving. I don't know what's coming, but I'm in the place for it. Why? Because I feel that churn. Whoa, I'm down with this. Whatever it is, Pops, whatever it is, Divine Mother, I'm in. Quantum coherence when it's all working. That wind blows and you almost bring you to tears because you can feel your ancestors in it. Quantum coherence, where you walk past a tree and you can feel the vibration of the tree and it says hello to you. Thank you for the oxygen that you breathe. And I look back and say hello. Quantum coherence. When everything around you is in tune and something happens with you, you didn't know what's going to happen, but you realize, ooh, this is way bigger than me. Quantum coherence. That's when your memory's on fleek, they say. And all that takes us back to the constitution of man. Man as a species, one male, one female. And that's the spirit, the essence of your divine origin. What? Your memory's open. Your mind interprets the world from a perspective and a position of wholeness, not from broken pain and sorrow and anger of everything else. Your body is a vessel for that energy, that kingdom that is inside you to come through. We used to say God looks through my eyes, God speaks with my mouth, God works with my hands, God walks with my feet, and God loves through my heart. That is what Jesus meant when he said the Father and I are one. What? You are a vessel. Your memory. People say, how do you learn how to do these things? I go like this. I just started doing them. Something said, learn this today. Okay, let's see if I got a talent for it. And I listen. I listen. Have you ever had that moment in time in life where something said turn left, go right, up the stairs, down the stairs? Have you ever had that experience where you followed that inner voice that came not from here, not from your ego, but from inside that kingdom that is in your consciousness, that deep down consciousness where you got limitless experience of energy and wisdom? And it just said, this will work. And then you have that will, that energy to complete the task, the creative authority to sit down and say, I got this. I got this. That's when you're in that zone. And so now we dive deep in our toolbox on a regular basis and say, and this is your reflection, where am I currently standing when I interpret my life? Not anybody else's life, but where are you standing when you interpret your own life? Up and looking, I see Najuma, and that was we are talking about quantum coherence where everything worked. She said, yes, it brought me to Atlanta. Best move I ever made with the experience major challenges. With experiencing major challenges. And I've heard the story. And it's a story. And it's a horrible, not a great story. It's like, oh my God, what? What? Get out of here. For real? And then you get to the end and you be like, wow, real. You walk into the what you thought was a storm, but what it really was that quantum coherence. The world had to, let me put my water down, had to shift to get everything in line for her to find herself where she's supposed to be. Powerful. One love. I appreciate it. And I tell everybody also, yeah, go to any of the public pages that we're live streaming on, and you can put a comment, and I can respond. I'm about to set it up where we do something called the collective, where yeah, you can actually come in the show and actually say your piece, and we can dialogue. And I'm gonna start advertising that I'm doing that before I actually do it. So think about that. But yeah, but now our reflection. Where am I currently standing in when I interpret my life? Now get this, there are levels to this game. Just because you get a sense of self doesn't mean that you reach the highest height and you living in some sense of awareness, but you're not necessarily completely being. And a lot of times you got to look at that. A lot of people that I know take for granted the information. Yeah, that's just from your education. The issue is, are you living from your memory? And I'm gonna say this because that's important. Living from your memory. So I go back. Where's that memory piece? And everything will hit you every now and then, and you got to go back. And so this is gonna be a little longer. So bear with me. Every computer is built. Computers are built off the design of humans beings, how we function. They find electronic ways to manipulate us. That's why you have AI. But in every computer, if you realize when you have a computer, you turn it on, you see the white letters that go up. Sometimes you got white letters that go up. That's called the BIOS, basic input and output system. That's basic information that you know before you get to Microsoft or before you get to Apple. There's the information in that system that tells that system what to do, how to run your keyboard, how to run your mouse, how to run your speakers, how to run your monitor, how to handle your memory, how to handle your CPU. The basic information, the memory, is built in. When your bias is broke, all of it's destroyed. Yeah, it's hard when you got to corrupt. Sometimes you can flash your BIOS, upgrade it to a higher state, but if your BIOS is gone, yeah, you ain't getting nothing because it can't run the operating system. So we got BIOS that we can't erase, but they put blocks in from us where we can't access that BIOS, that basic input output system. It's hidden behind European software. We talked about that. And so now in our reflection, are you making your decisions based off your BIOS, the memory that's built inside of you? Mm. What assumptions do I return to automatically? Like, what's a part of your conscience where you just be like, okay, nope, yep, nope. Black people can't be trusted. One love, that's Chunga. There's an elder in my community. He calls me every week to make sure I stay in alignment. So now, what assumptions, back to it, what assumptions do you automatically jump to? What decisions or thoughts you have that you say, this is it's how I always been, it's what I always thought, it's what I always agreed to? Cool. Now, did those assumptions come from your memory, your true starting point or from your background and your experience in living? Yeah, I make some decisions that I ain't got nothing to do with my history, man. And they're some of the wildest, craziest decisions, but I ride them out. Why? Because it's alignment. If I were fully aligned, how would I see differently? Whoa. That part came to me recently. Some decisions I made that I say I wasn't fully aligned. And if I was fully aligned, I think I would have responded this way at that time. And so if God gives me another faith test, then I'm going to take that faith test. Then I'm going to pass it. I'm definitely going to pass it. And so those are your reflections. Write the questions down and ask yourselves on a constant basis. There's levels to this game. Everybody can use this. Everybody can. There's not a person walking who can't use this information. And if you think you too how to use it, you still broken. Now, I cannot talk about you and not talk about how we raise our children. Imagine the beings that would exist in our communities throughout the diaspora if we focused on making sure that the memory, their basic operating system stayed tapped into. Nobody came up in a space of lack, but the whole child is fed mind, body, and spirit. And anytime we would see the world striking against that memory to put these blocks in where their behavior shifts, we're there to stop it. That means we develop an Ubuntu generation where they stay connected. And so we have different aspects and areas for them to apply themselves and use that awareness in that group setting where everybody they see, it's not the fact that they trust them, but they understand that you are an extension of I am, and I'm a best reflection of you. So I will give you my best self, and I can tell when you give me your best self. And we get them to work together that way. And if we can raise them up like that, man, please. What will we leave behind on this earth for the Creator to work through? That's a beautiful thought. And now we had this conversation, me and the kids. Now, the world already, they really help kids try to get this understanding. But again, they speak for only those with ears to hear. And if you're not going back, God bless you and power Andwele. He just came in my house. My community knows who Andwele is. Andwele would let Olu watch all different types of cartoons. And then he would sit there and he would walk through the meaning, the hidden meaning, so Olu didn't get bamboozled by watching something that talked about the declaration of black inferiority and then the acceptance of black inferiority and how certain cartoons make you feel like it's not good. It's okay to deny who you were called to be in a world that wasn't built for you. He'd break it down. And so I sat down and told him, I said, has anybody in the group seen the movie Soul? And parents, if you think you're too old to watch cartoons, this one is worth watching. Because it's going to talk about everything. It's going to talk about the starting point. Who we are and how we are before we were formed in the womb and consecrated at birth. And all the kids said, me, 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 me. And I said, so, can you remember what you went through to get here? Can you remember your assignment? Do you remember what you were called, what your name was before your mama named you? In African spirituality, when a woman is pregnant, there are certain areas or certain disciplines in spiritual technology where the shaman have a commune with the being, and the being tells them, this is my name and this is why I'm here. And this is what I'm called to do. So don't forget to name me what I need to always remember my purpose. You're like, what? Yes, that's what happens. And so they loved it. And I said, one of these days when we come in, we just gonna watch cartoons. And we're gonna discuss it. Now, some of it is for entertainment purposes, and that's the part they need to know. And some of it has some sense of truth. So let them talk about it and ask questions. But it's always being done. Always. They said the 7 balls of Dragon Ball Z is the chakra. I'm like, yeah, trust me, they're always. There's always information being released so that somebody, somewhere, can gain some awareness. Right? Now, in that space, if you understand that we need to be one people with one story and one future, and do everything we can to uplift and elevate the mindset of each other. Join the mission, join the conversation, and bring a child. With that being said, one of my younger brothers is bringing two of my a niece and a nephew, and then my other brother was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can get them to you back to you." My mother told me, "This is who you are for this family." My cousin Elizabeth in New York said, "We watch you. I get them to watch you when we can." My love, Elizabeth. And so, yeah, join the mission, join the conversation, bring a child, and in this journey, you will be guaranteed to see the rise of the African within inside yourself. And in that space, we all will be blessed. So until next week, one love.